Good afternoon. Welcome to Trail Talk. I am so glad you could join us today. I know we're an hour earlier than we said we were going to be, but that's because our good friend and special guest, E. Joe Brown, has another engagement that he needs to get to. He's such an important guy. We're very fortunate that he chose to stop by and visit with us, even though you're traveling, and I know you're very busy.
Yeah.
But welcome to Trail Talk
Thank you.
again.
This is great.
I know. I'm so excited to have you because today is the launch day, right?
Mm-hmm.
The day the second book in the Kelly Can series that you've written is hitting.
It hits the streets today. It really does. And tomorrow I will be in my hometown, Cushing, Oklahoma, which is heavily involved in this too, to do a book signing, and if you will, it'll be something that from a mercantile standpoint will launch the book.
Very nice, very nice. Well, Joe was with us last summer, I believe, right? Right around National Day of the Cowboy?
I was here. Well, I was here on Trail Talk, I think in May.
May, yes.
And then I came back in July to be part of.
National Day of the Cowboy. Yeah. So he's been here to see us a few times, and I think the first time you came, you brought some of your book.
I actually did. I stopped in. I want to say some.
It was in the springtime.
It was in the spring, so it must have been May. And I stopped because I was touring with this book, A Cowboy's Destiny, and I'm very proud of it. It did well.
It is a great, fun story to read. It is it's easy read.
Easy read.
The words on the pages are not super tiny.
No.
I mean, this is you told me that the audience is an adult audience.
It's an adult
and there's
audience.
a little racy kind of stuff in there that happens, and so it's a very good story, fun. It's fun. There's a lot of action, and Charlie Kelly, the protagonist of the book, is just this super great guy. He's intelligent, and he's brave. He's quick-witted. He is a quick learner.
He is that.
Adaptable. He's a dreamer, but he's also he goes after his dreams. He doesn't just dream for dreaming's sake. A dream is a goal for him.
It is, yeah.
And he's just a really great character. And Charlie is based on your grandfather.
Yes, my maternal grandfather, whose name was Kelly, but Clarence Kelly, the protagonist is Charlie Kelly. But a lot of the attributes she just described, I'm glad came through the book, about Charlie, you can apply to my granddad. My granddad literally was a major influence on me, and I try to live the code that he did, which is the cowboy code. You know, your word's your bond.
Right.
And your handshake, that's as good as a contract. And you got your buddies back, and all the other things that you might relate to a good guy.
Right.
That was my grandfather, and I do my best to live the same type of life. But he inspired the character. The story is not literally my granddad, but he inspired the attributes, and I have been told that what I literally wrote, and I didn't think about this ahead of time. I just wrote the story. It's just something that flew out of my brain.
Right.
But I did write a historical novel. I did write a Western novel. What I have learned is I wrote a Western romance.
Right. Yes. It absolutely is.
And so there is a lady that's a major part in the storyline, and will be in the entire entire saga, the entire set of books that are to come.
Mhm.
But Susan is not my grandmother. She's just Susan.
Mhm.
And how they met had nothing, how Charlie and Susan met had nothing to do with how my grandparents met or where or anything else.
Right.
But my grandmother was a sharp lady, you know,
Mhm.
but just nothing. Whereas Charlie's a big guy.
Mhm.
I think I described him as like 6'5" or something like that.
Mhm.
Well, my granddad, born in 1898, so you know
Right.
people were smaller then.
Right. Yes.
But my granddad was at least 6'4", 230, not fat, just a big man.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
but just as friendly and kind as you can be. But so they did share that too.
Right.
They both were big old dudes.
Big old dudes. Well, Charlie starts off in a family that his dad has some drinking issues, and there's they live it's a hard existence that, you know, they're poor, but they're hardworking. Charlie has 2 brothers and a sister, and they move and have to do a lot of things because of mistakes that his dad makes. But Charlie is quick to learn from his dad's mistakes. And just, you know, the story starts in 1917. And so, you know, there was a lot going on in the world at that time, World War I. A lot of things were changing. I mean, in the book, everyone is on horseback at the beginning, and people are driving cars and using telephones by the end, and it ends in 1919, February of 1919. So, in that short span of time, so many things changed in the world.
But they were.
Right,
They literally
right.
were.
Yes.
And you very accurately described his family life at the beginning of the book. And I'm sure some of my family will see this, but it's okay for them to know, those that don't. My great-granddaddy was a nomad. So Joe is kind of modeled after my great-granddad. They in 1917, they were in Fort Sumner, New Mexico, on a ranch outside of that town, working the ranch, not owning, but working the ranch. Well, guess what? My granddad in his teenage years was in Fort Sumner, New Mexico, on a ranch. And they came back to Oklahoma. Why? Because my great-granddad shot somebody.
Well, there you go.
My goodness.
There you go.
Well, or anyway, it was attributed to have.
Right.
So it just made for a...
You know, when people, that made me think, you know how people say, oh, you can't make this stuff up. Well,
you don't need to
you
sometimes.
don't need to. Exactly. Everybody has some crazy story like that a couple of generations back. And but it makes for a really intriguing story. There's the action and the different people that Charlie meets, and then the rest of the story happens in Oklahoma just as the oil boom is starting to take off.
Yes.
And so that is all. I mean, Elmore City is mentioned, of course, the 101 Ranch, counties that the 101 encompassed, and just so many great landmarks that makes this book really fun to read.
And even the Miller brothers that owned the 101 are in it. But one of the things that I mentioned early on, you mentioned him being a dreamer. Well, his ultimate dream was, oh my gosh, if I could just be a top ranch hand on the 101, I'd be in heaven. Well, that's his 101, and does a pretty good job.
It does a real good job. So I wanted to ask at the very end of the book, are we back on?
Hey, can you come down here, please?
Okay. Hey, we're back. You guys, there's no telling what you saw or heard during that. It was a lapse here. But at any rate, at the end, or at the very back of your first book, there is a thank you to someone from the 101 Ranch, a member of like an old timers association. Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
So the incidents in the book that happened at the 101, were those actual things that happened, like cattle rustlers and
They dealt with some of that,
those-
but I did not take any specific thing and just overlay it into the story. But in fact, the issues that were out at the ranch were similar to what was going on.
Okay.
I think a gentleman by the name of Joe Glazier. Joe is on the board of directors of the 101 Ranch Old Timers Association to this very day, which I'm now a proud member of.
Ah, yay.
And Joe is also the historian.
Okay.
So I hope to see him this weekend before I go back to New Mexico.
Oh, right.
But anyway, I have a lot of thank yous for Joe.
Right,
He's
exactly.
a great guy.
Well, I just, before we start talking about a little bit about the new book, I just want everyone to know we have copies available here of the first book called Destiny,
Yeah.
right?
Cowboy's
This is A Cowboy's Destiny, the Kelly Can Saga. This is the first book in the series. These are available for purchase here at the Chisholm Trail Heritage Center.
I have these with me too.
And we're going to have some copies of the second book, which is called A Cowboy's Fortune. I like how they've carried the picture for that continuity there. Anyway, this book is great, and honestly, I am excited to get the second one and read it just because of how fun this book is to read.
Well,
It really is a fun story, and you told me that it made some very special lists, like book.
I was very pleased that in this first year, it made a bestseller list of the Tulsa World newspaper, which is kind of pretty cool in this state, especially in the part of the state that a lot of the story happens. And and by the way, those of you that are watching this that live around Duncan, if you haven't come to this place, you really need to. But also, in the early part of Book 1, they're on a ranch outside of Loco, right here in Stevens County.
Right.
And guess what? My granddaddy Kelly, born in Loco.
Well, there you go. There you go. Yes, Stevens County is mentioned more than one time in this book.
But anyway, it won Tulsa World. There's a bestseller list that's based on input from the independent bookstores in the state that made that bestseller list. And last fall, a few months ago, 4 or 5 months ago, I learned that this book was a finalist, in other words, top 5 in the Southwest, in what's known as the New Mexico Arizona Book Awards. And
Very good. Well, congratulations.
I think that means that my peers thought it was a pretty good book, because that's who votes for that.
Well, there you go. Yeah, congratulations
Thank
on
you.
a very successful first run
Well,
at this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So let's hit a few of the high spots, or what you feel like you might want to share about this sequel.
Okay, first off, it literally takes off the morning after the wedding.
Okay.
The wedding is kind of climaxes here. Well, and with Charlie sitting in the breakfast parlor of the Kramer home, Walter Kramer's home on Westover Road in Kansas City. And by the way, that home exists. It is the actual home of William Kemper. William Kemper was a huge businessman in Kansas City during this period. That house was built in 1914.
Okay.
And William Kemper was a banker. As a matter of fact, I bet you, those of you that are watching this are from here in Oklahoma, have heard of the as a subsidiary of a bank that William Kemper started in Kansas City.
Okay.
But anyway, so Walter Kramer, Susan's father, is loosely based on William Kemper. And I got to checking out, and something about him. If the house that he had built and lived in doesn't still exist, Linda and I, my wife, who's here with us, we were on a trip. We went through Kansas City, looked up that address. That's a beautiful home.
Well, it seemed like a really amazing.
But that's
place.
where book 2 starts, in that home,
Okay.
in the breakfast parlor, and they learn. Well, Walter had worked it out with them, but they discussed the fact that Charlie and Susan are going to honeymoon now, and Walter's not in good health, and Susan really doesn't want to go anywhere. But he convinces them that they need to do it, and there's a place, an island called Jekyll Island off of the Georgia coast. And in this era, actually it happened in the late 1800s, but in this era, many of the people that are famous from the Gilded Age, the Vanderbilts, the Rockefellers, the Goodyears, the whatever, they all, 100 of those businessmen pooled the resources and bought that island and then built a getaway. And on that island they had a big main place, but they all had cottages. Well, now those cottages were probably bigger than most houses, anywhere else, but they called them cottages. Well, Walter Kramer, that was his running buddies, because he was the richest man west of the Mississippi. And he was in banking, he was in railroad, he had department stores, and he had a construction company. And the Kramer Group was a large conglomerate. Anyway, so he's telling the kids, no, I want you to take my Pullman. Now, back in the day, these rich people had elegant Pullman cars that train cars. And so take my Pullman and you go to Jekyll Island, for your honeymoon. Well, they do. So that's at the beginning of the story.
Okay.
But while they're there, Walter turns for the worse. So they come home immediately, and they get there before he passes, but he will pass in the early part of the book. And so Charlie and Susan and Charlie, however you want to say it, they take over the Kramer Group, and they also have learned before he passed that Walter had Kurt Schlegel, who was his brother-in-law, and Susan's uncle,
The attorney,
had him create Kelly Oil and all of that stuff. But anyway, so the book then takes them taking hold of the Kramer Group, but also Kelly Oil, and that this story kind of centers around that. But Charlie is still working for George Miller at the beginning of the book, right?
Right.
So Susan reminds Charlie, we need to get back for 101. He says, well, but he says, I can work with my uncle and we can set stuff up. I can run this company from afar. Anyway, so the storyline deals with how they maintain their commitments, which Charlie, of course, was going to do. To the 101 ranch and to the Millers, and work with Kelly Oil and everything else. And I tell you something I want to share. And it could end up being a really surprise, but it also might be something that the people might want to know so they can anticipate it and look for it in the book. Sometimes, whether this sells a book or not, I think it's just interesting. Most of this, folks, was written a few years ago. And then over the past year, I revised it, matured it, and got it to the publisher. But the scene in this book that happens in Pawhuska, Oklahoma, on Agency Hill, at the foot of the $1 Million Elm,
Mm-hmm.
where the Osage properties were either sold off or leased off.
Mm-hmm.
One of the main scenes in this book happens there. Tell me what else happened in the past year that the people might recognize.
Right, Killers of the
Flower
Flower
Moon.
Moon. Mm-hmm. Yes.
This, I had no idea that movie was in the process of coming out.
Mhm.
I mean, I'd heard of the book, but I hadn't read the book. I didn't know anything about it.
That,
But
and
that
that
just-
part, have you seen the movie?
Yes,
So that scene is not really in the movie, but it's in the book.
it
They
is.
tell that story
Yes.
of all of these names. They're all representatives. Some of them are the actual people, the
Yes.
big oil guys of the day.
In that scene,
They are there.
Charlie and his partner Hank
Uh-huh.
are bidding against Sinclair,
Mm-hmm.
Skelly, and, well, Getty didn't bid on this particular, but they meet Getty. But there's a person that shows up here, that ends up showing up here,
Ah.
bad guy here,
Okay.
that is part of the storyline.
Oh, very interesting.
how-
I like that.
How amazing that, Pawhuska and Agency
Right,
Hill
Right,
and all that.
it is a
ends up-
great, like, historical thread that's made this
Mhm.
up, John, where people
Yeah.
are aware and very aware and,
Mhm.
more and more knowledgeable about the events that happened in those days, and that
Mhm.
this is another one of the things, the historical fiction. Maybe it is a Western romance, but it is historical fiction.
Yep.
And so that means there are events that actually took place
Absolutely.
and that coincide with the dates in the
Mhm.
book. And so that accuracy is so great. I love that part.
Right, and of course, some of the scenes in this book happen in a place called the Hotel Tulsa. Now, the
Mhm.
Hotel Tulsa does not exist now, but in this era, even the Mayo Hotel still exists. It come on in the late 20s.
Mhm.
The most elegant before the Mayo, and I'm not saying the Mayo was more elegant, it just came along
Right.
later. But the Hotel Tulsa is huge in the history of that city.
Mhm.
And $1 million deals were done in the lobby
Mhm.
and the coffee shop and and so forth of the Hotel Tulsa.
The Fire and Beulah, that book that we were talking about, if you're not familiar, great historical fiction book about the race riots.
Mhm.
Those very things were happening in the lobby of that hotel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so this is actually where that location
Mhm.
is, Charlie and Susan had rooms there, and they learned that J. Paul Getty and Sinclair, and Skelly and so forth, but especially Getty and Sinclair, literally had rooms there, but they just literally lived in and then did business in the lobby and
Mhm.
around and so forth. Charlie and Susan decided, well, if we're gonna run Kelly Oil, and, we're gonna need to have a location
A
to operate
residence.
from.
Uh-huh.
So Tulsa becomes very important in book two.
Mhm.
But my hometown of Cushing was booming at the time as well, and it still to this day is considered the pipeline crossroads of the world.
Mhm.
And at its peak, 50 oil refineries were around Cushing.
Wow.
Matter of fact, when I moved there as a kid,
Mhm.
elementary school age,
Mhm.
you could still smell the refineries.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
they were still there. Not so much now, but my goodness, what used to be pasture land now is full of oil tanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Storage and so forth.
Right.
But Cushing becomes very important back then, so it's important in this story.
Mhm.
And I'll just say that the climax of
Mhm.
book two happens in Cushing.
Ah, very very good. These are just fun, and I love how you're just making, you're taking a really deep look at the industry that shaped
Mhm.
us as a state.
Mhm.
You know, we didn't start out with the oil and
Mhm.
gas, but that is where we are today. And
Even today.
the ups, the downs, the good, the bad, the whole thing shaped Oklahoma into who we are. And I love that Charlie and Susan are kind of taking us through this historical trip together, and we get to enjoy their story and in the midst of all of that.
Well, I just find the 1920s, or as they're commonly called, the Roaring 20s.
Right.
I find that to be a fascinating period,
Mm-hmm.
and it just fit with some of the stories that my granddad used to talk about
Mm-hmm.
in the teens, actually. But because again, by 1921 he was married.
Right.
But I'm looking forward to taking Charlie and Susan through their personal growth and the growth of the oil business, period, and of course oil, and into family life with kids. I have ideas in my mind, and it'll depend on how things are going as far as other people being interested. But I have ideas that could take them at least into the 1950s.
Oh, wow. That would be great. What a fun timeline.
They would be grandparents
Uh-huh.
and their kids. Listen, well, I think I told you this last year, and my publisher has told me more than once, Joe, your storyline is a blend of the classic Western Lonesome Dove, because they were true cowboys,
Mm-hmm.
and the TV show Dallas.
This is true.
Can you
It
see
might
that?
not be quite as racy as Dallas. I think he kind of kept some of that, out. But
Yeah.
no, it really is. It is entertaining
Mm-hmm.
to that degree. It really is.
Yeah.
And so I'm very excited to see where all this goes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very fun to be right here on the beginning end of it.
Yeah, I'm really having a lot of fun with it.
Good.
As a matter of fact, probably my biggest challenge is that an author needs time to write,
Mm-hmm.
but you also need time to share your excitement
Mm-hmm.
and to market,
Right.
because
Yes.
if you don't sell the books, then no one is reading it. And I know I'm not any different, but I don't think anyone wants to know how your story affects people.
Mm-hmm.
And I am always open to, you should have done this, it'd have been better if you'd have done that,
Mm-hmm.
or Joe, that was perfect. I loved it just the way it is. I want to hear both sides of it.
Mm-hmm.
I have to admit, I'm kind of hearing some good stuff,
Yeah.
but I know, because I was involved, I know there's some warts on this thing too, okay? but it's, gosh, it's been fun. And I love, even though my wife and I had all these plans to see all the states in the nation and so forth in our retirement from the Air Force, but I'm loving coming back to where I grew up.
That's so nice.
I'm an Oklahoman at heart, but we're living in Albuquerque, grandkids. You know, that's what grandparents do.
Right.
They try their best to be around the grandkids.
Yes.
And I got to see a 2-year-old who's in high school now, and an 8-year-old that is now 21 and about to graduate from college in another year or so. And
Well,
she's
years well
just
spent.
great.
Yours
Yes.
well spent, Joe.
Yes, yes.
No regrets.
No.
And I mean, another thing that I love about this is that you're writing these books at a time when a lot of folks might say, oh, what do I have left to give?
Mm-hmm.
You know? But I think that that's a great inspiration for people. You're never too old to start something new. Just
Well,
do it.
you know, I totally agree. I really do. And I'm happy that I have the opportunity to do this. And I'll tell you something else that I would like to encourage people along those lines. You'd be surprised what people would find interesting out of some folks' life. I've written a few memoirs. That's a shorter piece, you know. It may even be just a short story,
Right.
you know, maybe 5,000 words or less. But I've found a period of time in my life. I coached high school football for over a decade, actually. And so I've got a short story about a really cool thing that happened while I coached football. Because of where I was out in Southern California testing airplanes, once in a while they do movies in Southern California, you know, and the movie Armageddon was filmed, part of it was filmed on Edwards Air Force Base. I got the unique opportunity. I was just the right guy in the right place at the right time, but I was technical advisor to Michael Bay, the director, and spent a month with Michael Bay and Bruce Willis and Ben Affleck and Bob Thornton and so forth. That's a short story. Why am I saying that? Because folks, something happened in your life.
Right.
That was your story. It happened to you. Share it.
Very good.
Even if it's just a short story. Put it on paper just so maybe if no one else, your grandkids can write about something that happened to you. Because every one of us has some pretty cool things.
Yes, that's
that
true.
happen.
That's a good word.
You may not even know it's cool, but it's cool.
It's cool. It's cool to somebody, that's for sure. Well, I'm very excited about a cowboy's fortune, and you might notice there's a few oil derricks there in the background on the cover of this book. Launching today, book signing tomorrow.
Tomorrow in Cushing, Friday in Enid, Saturday in Ponca City, and I'm going home.
Via a trip to the 101.
You got it.
Hopefully.
I'll be passing the 101 before I go home.
Well, good thing. So the next time you might see Joe, hopefully, will be at National Day of the Cowboy, which is the 4th Saturday in July. And as always, we will be hosting that event right here at the Heritage Center, and that's where you'll see this guy here at the Heritage Center. And anyway, good luck. I can't wait till the next book comes out or whatever brings you this way again, Joe, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk.
Well, I look forward to that, and I'll tell you folks, come visit this place. It is one wonderful place, and they are doing a great job of keeping history alive here.
Thank you. Appreciate that. That's the goal. Well, we'll see you guys tomorrow. We are going to have a little lesson about cotton, which was in recent years named Oklahoma State Fiber. One of our state symbols. That's an odd one, but looking back through the history of cotton in Oklahoma, intriguing story. It's pretty interesting.
Kelly's grew cotton.
There you go.
Here we go.
There you go. I think my dad talks about picking cotton when he was a kid. They family little plots. So anyway, join us tomorrow, 3 o'clock right here. And you know how we sign up? We say happy trails.
You betcha.
Okay, we'll see you guys tomorrow. Happy
Trails.
trails.